an introduction to Murphy's Laws. And I am Krupashankar here with you. Have you ever received a phone call the minute you sat down on the toilet? Or has the bus you wanted ever appeared the instant you lit up a cigarette? Has it ever started raining on the day you washed your car? Or stopped raining just after you bought an umbrella? Perhaps you realized at some time that something was afoot, that some universal principle was just out of your grasp, itching to be called by name. Perhaps having heard of Murphy's Law, the Peter principle of the law of selective gravity, right? You have wanted to invoke one of these only to find that you have forgotten its exact wording. This is a compilation of all that wit and wisdom of our most delightfully demented technologists, bureaucrats, humanists and antisocial observers. And the purpose is to provide us all with a little karmic relief. Now throughout history, pundits and posiers have regaled us with the laws of universe and subtle yet immutable substructure which is the basis of cosmic order. From people of religion we have received the moral laws, from mystics the laws of karma, from rationalists the laws of logical form, and from artists the laws of aesthetics. Now it is from the technologists and it is their turn to bend our collective ear. The official party line of technology, of science itself, is despair. If you doubt this, witness the laws of thermodynamics as they are restated in Ginsberg's theorem. The universe is simmering down like a giant stew left to cook for 4 billion years. Sooner or later, we won't be able to tell the carrots from the onions. But what of the short run, the proverbial closed system, you may well ask, as you sit gazing out of your window, sipping your drink and watching the hustling throngs of God's little creatures going about their business. Alas, we've only to look at this business as exemplified in the good bureaucracy through the eyes of Peter Parkinson et al. We will realize that it's only a matter of time before the microcosmic specks we call big business and government, like the universal counterpart, lose their ability to succeed in spite of themselves. We are on the wrong side of the tapestry, so said Father Brown, G.K. Chesterton's famous clerical suit. And indeed we are. A few loose ends, an occasional thread, are all we ever see of the great celestial masterwork, of the most expensive carpet weaver of them all. A small number of courageous individuals have dared to explore the far side of the tapestry, have braved the wrath of the keeper of the rug in their search for truth. It is to these individuals that this volume is dedicated. Morphology, or Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will. Corollaries are, nothing is as easy as it looks. The second one, everything takes longer than you think. Third, if there is a possibility of several things going wrong, the one that will cause the most damage will be the one to go wrong. If you perceive that there are 4 possible ways in which a procedure can go wrong and circumvent these, then a 5th way will promptly develop. Left to themselves, things tend to go from bad to worse. Whenever you set out to do something, something else must be done first. Every solution breeds new problems. It's impossible to make anything foolproof because fools are so ingenious. Nature always sides with the hidden flaw. Mother Nature is a bitch. The Murphy philosophy, smile, tomorrow will be worse. Murphy's constant, matter will be damaged in direct proportion to its value. Bowling's postulate, if you're feeling good, don't worry, you'll get over it. Chisholm's second law, when things are going well, something will go wrong. The corollaries are, when things just can't get any worse, they will. 2. Anytime things appear to be going better, you have overlooked something. Finagle's first law, if an experiment works, something has gone wrong. Finagle's second law, no matter what the anticipated result, there will always be someone eager to misinterpret it, fake it, or believe it happened to his own pet theory. And yet another law of Finagle. Once a job is fouled up, anything done to improve it only makes it worse. Finagle's rules: to study a subject best, understand it thoroughly before you start. 2. Always keep a record of data. It indicates you have been working. 3. Always draw your curves, then plot your reading. 4. In case of doubt, make it sound convincing. Experiments should be reproducible. They should all fail in the same way. Do not believe in miracles. Rely on them. The pace of progress. Society is a mule, not a car. If pressed too hard, it will kick and throw off its rider. Murphy's law of thermodynamics. Things get worse under pressure. Ho's law. Everyone has a scheme that will not work. Zymertji's first law of evolving system dynamics. Once you open a can of worms, the only way to recan them is to use a larger can. Non-reciprocal laws of expectations. Negative expectations yield negative results. Positive expectations yield negative results. Booker's law: an ounce of application is worth a ton of abstraction. And then, no books are lost by lending except those you particularly wanted to keep. Another law: if you miss one issue of any magazine, it will be the issue which contained the article, story or installment you were anxious to read. Corollary: all your friends either missed it, lost it or threw it out. Complementary rules of ownership. If you keep anything long enough, you can throw it away. 2. If you throw anything away, you will need it as soon as it is no longer accessible. Yet another law: no matter how long or how hard you shop for an item, after you have bought it, it will be on sale somewhere cheaper. Laws of gardening. Other people's tools work only in other people's gardens. Fancy gizmos don't work. If anybody uses it, there is a reason. If you get the most of what you need, you get the most of what you need the least. The airplane law. When the plane you are on is late, the plane you want to transfer to is on time. And Kitman's law: pure drivel tends to drive off the TV screen ordinary drivel. Pure drivel will drive off the ordinary drivel. Boobe's law: you always find something the last place you look. Second law of revision. Of course, the first law of revision is information necessitating a change of design will be conveyed to the designer after and only after the plans are complete. And often this is called the now they tell us law. Corollary: in simple cases presenting one obvious right way versus one obvious wrong way, it is often wiser to choose the wrong way so as to expedite subsequent revision. Second law of revision. The more innocuous the modification appears to be, the further its influence will extend and the more the plans will have to be redrawn. Laws of applied confusion. The one piece that the plant forgot to ship is the one that supports 75% of the balance of the shipment. Corollary: not only did the plant forget to ship it, 50% of the time they haven't even made it. Truck deliveries that normally take 1 day will take 5 days when you are waiting for the truck. After adding 2 weeks to the schedule for unexpected delays, add 2 more for the unexpected delays. In any structure, pick out the one piece that should not be mismarked and expect the plant to cross you up. Now, corollaries are: if any group of pieces with the same erection mark on it, any group of pieces with the same erection mark on it, one should not have that mark on it. 2. It will not be discovered until you try to put it where the mark says it's supposed to go. And never argue with the fabricating plant about an error. The inspection prints are all checked off, even to the holes that aren't there. The snafu equations. Snafu stands for the situation normal, all fouled up. SNAFU. Given any problem containing n equations, there will always be n plus 1 unknowns. An object or bit of information most needed will be the least available. Once you have exhausted all possibilities and fail, there will be one solution, simple and obvious. highly visible to everyone else. Badness comes in waves. Laws of computer programming. Any given program when running is obsolete. Any given program costs more and takes longer. If a program is useful, it will have to be changed. If a program is useless, it will have to be documented. Any given program will expand to fill all available memory. The value of a program is proportional to the weight of its output. Program complexity grows until it exceeds the capability of the programmer who must maintain it. Gilb's laws of unreliability. Computers are unreliable, but humans are even more unreliable. Any system which depends on human reliability is unreliable. Undetectable errors are infinite in variety, in contrast to detectable errors, which by definition are limited. Investment in reliability will increase until it exceeds the probable cost of errors, or until someone insists on getting some useful work done. Brooks' law. Adding manpower to a late software project makes it later. The effort required to correct course increases geometrically with time. Build a system that even a fool can use, and only a fool will want to use it. Law of the perversity of nature. You cannot successfully determine beforehand which side of the bread to butter. And law of selective gravity. An object will fall so as to do the most damage. And a corollary, the chance of the bread falling with the buttered side down is directly proportional to the cost of the carpet. And another one, the most delicate component will be the one to drop. And the law of the workshop, any tool when dropped will roll into the least accessible corner of the workshop. Johnson's first law, when any mechanical contrivance fails, it will do so at the most inconvenient possible time. Anything can be made to work if you fiddle with it long enough. If you mess with the thing long enough, it will break. Law of force, don't force it, get a larger hammer. And here is the 5-thumb postulate. Experience varies directly with equipment ruined. That's a good one. Experience varies directly with equipment ruined. When all else fails, read the instructions. Murphy's law of research. Enough research will tend to support your theory. If the facts do not conform to the theory, they must be disposed of. Corollaries, the bigger the theory, the better. And the experiment may be considered a success if no more than 50% of the observed measurements must be discarded to obtain a correspondence with the theory. And Williams' law, if enough data is collected, anything may be proven by statistical methods. Eddington's theory. The number of different hypotheses erected to explain a given biological phenomena is inversely proportional to the available knowledge. Another law, the solution to a problem changes the nature of the problem. Under the most rigorously controlled conditions of pressure, temperature, volume, humidity and other variables, the organism will do as it damn well pleases. Rule of accuracy. When working toward the solution of a problem, it always helps if you know the answer. Young's law. All great discoveries are made by mistake. Corollary. The greater the funding, the longer it takes to make the mistake. Hoare's law of large problems. Inside every large problem is a small problem struggling to get out. Never replicate a successful experiment. No experiment is reproducible. No experiment is ever a complete failure. It can always serve as a negative example. If you do not understand a particular word in a piece of technical writing, ignore it. The piece will make perfect sense without it. Successful research attracts the bigger grant, which makes further research impossible. Parkinson's sixth law. The progress of science varies inversely with the number of journals published. Whole picture principle. Research scientists are so wrapped up in their own narrow endeavors that they cannot possibly see the whole picture of anything including their own research. Corollary, the director of research should know as little as possible about the specific subject of research he is administering. Whenever a system becomes completely defined, some damn fool discovers something which either abolishes the system or expands it beyond recognition. Nature abhors a vacuous experimenter. There is never time to do it right, but there is always time to do it over. Heller's law, hierarchyology. The first myth of management is that it exists. Johnson's corollary. Nobody really knows what's going on anywhere within the organization. Now the repeater principle. In a hierarchy, every employee tends to rise to his level of incompetence. Corollaries. In time, every post tends to be occupied by an employee who is incompetent to carry out its duties. Work is accomplished by those employees who have not yet reached their level of incompetence. Peter's inversion. Internal consistency is valued more highly than efficient service. Every employee begins at his level of incompetence. Supercompetence is more objectionable than incompetence. Competence always contains the seed of incompetence. Create the impression that you have already reached your level of incompetence. Incompetence plus incompetence equals incompetence. The law of substitution. Look after the molehills and the mountains will look after themselves. Spend sufficient time in confirming the need, and the need will disappear. Peter's placebo. An ounce of image is worth a pound of performance. Generalizedness of incompetence is directly proportional to highestness in hierarchy. Circumstances can force a generalized incompetent to become competent, at least in a specialized field. In any human enterprise, work seeks the lowest hierarchical level. The organization of any bureaucracy is very much like a septic tank. The really big chunks always rise to the top. Parkinson's third law. Expansion means complexity, and complexity decays. Parkinson's fourth law. The number of people in any working group tends to increase, regardless of the amount of work to be done. Parkinson's fifth law. If there is a way to delay an important decision, the good bureaucracy, public or private, will find it. Parkinson's axioms. An official wants to multiply subordinates, not rivals. Officials make work for each other. The iron law of oligarchy. In every organized activity, no matter the sphere, a small number will become the oligarchical leaders and the others will follow. There is a tendency for the person in the most powerful position in an organization to spend all of his or her time serving on committees and signing letters. Authority tends to assign jobs to those least able to do them. Volunteer labor. Law of volunteer labor. People are always available for work in the past tense. The inevitable result of improved and enlarged communications between different levels in a hierarchy is a vastly increased area of misunderstanding. In a hierarchical organization, the higher the level, the greater the confusion. Overdoing things is harmful in all cases, even when it comes to efficiency. Spark's 10 rules for the project manager. 1. Strive to look tremendously important. 2. Attempt to be seen with important people. Speak with authority, however, only expound on the obvious and proven facts. Don't engage in arguments, but if cornered, ask an irrelevant question and lean back with a satisfied grin while your opponent tries to figure out what's going on, then quickly change the subject. Listen intently while others are arguing the problem. Pounce on a trite statement and bury them with it. If a subordinate asks you a pertinent question, look at him as if he had lost his senses. Then, when he looks down, paraphrase the question back at him. Obtain a brilliant assignment, but keep out of sight and out of limelight. Walk at fast pace when out of the office. This keeps questions from subordinates and superiors at a minimum. Always keep the office door closed. This puts visitors on the defensive and also make it look as if you're always in an important conference. Give all orders verbally. Never write anything down that might go into Pearl Harbor file. Truths of management. Think before you act. It's not your money. 2. All good management is the expression of one great idea. 3. No executive devotes effort to proving himself wrong. 4. If sophisticated calculations are needed to justify an action, don't do it. The first law of leadership, changing things is central to leadership, and changing them before anyone else is creativeness. A worker's dilemma. No matter how much you do, you will never do enough. And what you don't do is always more important than what you do. A Matches maxim. A fool in a high station is like a man on the top of a high mountain. Everything appears small to him and he appears small to everybody. Mencken's law. Those who can, do. Those who cannot, teach. And the extension, those who cannot teach, administrate. The army axiom. Any order that can be misunderstood has been misunderstood. The man who can smile when things go wrong has thought of someone he can blame it on. First law of socioeconomics. In a hierarchical system, the rate of pay for a given task increases in inverse ratio to the unpleasantness and difficulty of the task. Harry's lament is all the good ones are taken. Putt's law. Technology is dominated by two types of people. Those who understand what they do not manage, and those who manage what they do not understand. Committology. Law of triviality. The time spent on any item of the agenda will be in inverse proportion to the sum involved. And the less you enjoy serving on committees, the more likely you are to be pressed to do so. And if a problem causes many meetings, the meetings eventually become more important than the problem. Truman's law. If you cannot convince them, confuse them. And the first law of debate is never argue with a fool. People might not know the difference. Laws of procrastination. Procrastination shortens the job and places the responsibility for its termination on someone else. That is the authority who imposed the deadline. 2. It reduces anxiety by reducing the expected quality of the project from the best of all possible efforts to the best that can be expected given the limited time. Status is gained in the eyes of others and in one's own eyes because it is assumed that the importance of the work justifies distress. Avoidance of interruptions, including the assignment of other duties, can usually be achieved so that the obviously stressed worker can concentrate on the single effort. Procrastination avoids boredom. One never has the feeling that there is nothing important to do. Further, it may eliminate the job if the need passes before the job can be done. Boren's laws are when in doubt, mumble, when in trouble, delegate, when in charge, ponder. And Patton's law, a good plan today is better than a perfect plan tomorrow. Accountsmanship, Parkinson's first law. Work expands to fill the time available for its completion. The thing to be done swells in perceived importance and complexity in a direct ratio with the time to be spent in its completion. Crane's law is, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. Parkinson's second law is expenditures rise to meet income. And Parkinson's law of delay. Delay is the deadliest form of denial. Gresham's law. Trivial matters are handled promptly and important matters are never solved. 90-90 rule of project schedules. The first 90% of the task takes 10% of the time and the last 10% takes the other 90%. The ordering principle. Those supplies necessary for yesterday's experiment must be ordered no later than tomorrow noon. Cheop's law. Nothing ever gets built on schedule or within budget. Extended Epstein-Heisenberg principle. In an R&D orbit, only two of the existing three parameters can be defined simultaneously. The parameters are task, time, and resources. That's money. If one knows what the task is, then there is time limit. There is a time limit allowed for the completion of the task. Then one cannot guess how much it will cost. If the time and resources are clearly defined, then it's impossible to know what part of the R&D task will be performed. If you are given a clearly defined R&D goal and a definite amount of money which has been calculated to be necessary for the completion of the task, you cannot predict if and when the goal will be reached. If one is lucky enough and can accurately define all three parameters, then what one deals with is not in the realm of R&D. Pareto's law, the 80-20 law. 20% of the customers account for 80% of the turnover. 20% of the components account for 80% of the cost. And there's John's collateral corollary. In order to get a loan, you must first prove you don't need it. The law of institutions. The opulence of the front office decor varies inversely with the fundamental solvency of the firm. Malek's law is any simple idea will be worded in the most complicated way. Weinberg's corollary is an expert is a person who avoids the small errors while sweeping on to the grand fallacy. Potter's law is the amount of flack received on any subject is inversely proportional to the subject's true value. Law of revolutionary ideas. Every revolutionary idea in science, politics, art or whatever evokes three stages of reaction. They may be summed up by three phases. First, it's impossible, don't waste my time. 2, it's possible, but it is not worth doing. 3, I said it was a good idea all along. Clark's first law. When a distinguished but elderly scientist states something is possible, he is almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he is very probably wrong. Second law. The only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible. Rule of the great. When somebody you greatly admire and respect appears to be thinking deep thoughts, they're probably thinking about their lunch. Levy's ninth law. Only God can make a random selection. And his eighth law was, no amount of genius can overcome a preoccupation with detail. Ranamuk's law. The 4 kinds of people. Those who sit quietly and do nothing. Those who talk about sitting quietly and doing nothing. Those who do things. And those who talk about doing things. Wheeler's law. Nothing is impossible for the man who doesn't have to do it himself. And Weinberg's second law. If builders built buildings the way programmers wrote programs, then the first woodpecker that came along would destroy civilization. First law of sociogenetics is celibacy is not hereditary. Beefield's principle. The profitability of a young man meeting a desirable and receptive young female increases by pyramidical progression when he is already in the company of a date, or his wife, or a better looking and richer male friend. Pardo's postulates. Anything good in life is either illegal, immoral, or fattening. The 3 faithful things in life are money, a dog, and an old woman. Don't care if you are rich or not, as long as you can live comfortably and have everything you want. Parker's law. Beauty is only skin deep, but ugly goes clean to the bone. Law of conservation of evil. The total amount of evil in any system remains constant. Hence, any diminution in one direction, for instance a reduction in poverty or unemployment, is accompanied by an increase in another, that is, crime or pollution. Katz's law. Men and nations will act rationally when all other possibilities have been exhausted. And law of political statements. The truth of any proposition has nothing to do with its credibility and vice versa. And another axiom, the sum of the intelligence on the planet is a constant. The population is growing. The law of the individual. Nobody really cares or understands what anyone else is doing. Everybody should believe in something. I believe, I'll have another drink. The Kennedy constant. Don't get mad, get even. And another motto here, it's morally wrong to allow suckers to keep their money. And Jonas's motto is, friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. And a codicil to this motto is, to make an enemy, do someone a favor. Wick's law. A man without religion is like a fish without a bicycle. The 5th rule is, you have taken yourself too seriously. Another postulate, the number of rational hypotheses that can explain any given phenomena is infinite. The ultimate principle is, by definition, when you are investigating the unknown, you do not know what you will find. Max Law, it's better to have a horrible ending than to have horrors without end. The only imperfect thing in nature is the human race. And a paradox here, a pipe gives a wise man time to think and a fool something to stick in his mouth. Churchill's commentary on man. Man will occasionally stumble over the truth, but most of the time he will pick himself up and continue on. And Busey's law is nothing is ever accomplished by a reasonable man. The universe is not only queerer than we imagine, it is queerer than we can imagine. In dealing with their own problems, faculty members are the most extreme conservatives. And dealing with other people's problems, they are the most extreme liberals. This is a poem from Walt Whitman, Song of the Open Road. From this hour I ordain myself, loosed of limits and imaginary lines, going where I list, my own master, total and absolute, listening to others, considering well what they say, pausing, searching, receiving, contemplating, gently but with undeniable will, divesting myself of the holds that would hold me. I inhale great draughts of space. The east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness. All seems beautiful to me. I can repeat over to men and women, you have done such good to me, I would do the same to you. Academically. Unfortunately, IQ tests are not so good at predicting who will be successful in life. It's emotional intelligence, EQ, or what we can call right smarts, which are the key to success, no matter how success is defined. What is emotional intelligence? Change and growth take place when a person has risked himself and dares to become involved with experimenting with his own life. Herbert Otto. Now there are many new ways of looking at intelligence, mind you. Emotional intelligence involves the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings and emotions, to discriminate among them, and to use this information to guide one's thinking and actions. The development of EQ, it doesn't happen all at once. You become. It takes a long time. Now developing EQ is a hero's journey. The late Joseph Campbell, author of The Hero with 1,000 Faces, described it as a quest we set out on during which we leave our comfort zone and venture into unknown territory. Inevitably, we encounter dragons, forces with which we grapple, and in the struggle we emerge with the Grail. Grail. Grail is the holy cup. The struggle is painful perhaps, but definitely worth the journey. Reptiles and badly frightened people have two things in common. They have no sense of humor and they eat their young. David Schnarch. The emotionally intelligent individual. Building character is like making bread. You have to mix it little by little, step by step, and moderate temperature is necessary. Roshi Suzuki. A person with high EQ has learned to integrate the parts of a brain and uses the human brain in most circumstances. He or she has a solid sense of himself or herself that is non-negotiable in any context. Such a person is able to stay within integrity and to operate out of her values. Achieving it is a growth process between which psychologists have called by several names. Psychoanalyst Carl Jung calls it individuation. Family therapist Murray Bowen called it differentiation. And a person with high EQ has the ability to stay calm and centered and maintain a sense of self in the presence of others, especially with those whom he or she has an emotional connection. They have a high level of EI and they maintain their course when important people in their lives are upset with them or pressure them to agree and conform. They in fact can agree without feeling they have given themselves up and can disagree without being paralyzed with anxiety over a losing relationship. It's like an old joke that says maturation, that is high EQ, is the ability to do what you want to do even if your parents approve of your choice. When we have high EQ, we can stay connected with people even when we disagree with them. High EQ people can assimilate a high level of stress and have the ability to be around anxious people without absorbing and passing on that anxiety. In addition, high EQ people have qualities of compassion, altruism, self-discipline, optimism, flexibility, and the ability to solve problems and cope with stress. They're able to read and monitor their own feelings and those of other people. They can maintain satisfying interpersonal relationships. Finally, and to me, one of the most important qualities of all, they have a sense of humor and are fun to be around. Involuntary EQ development. Perhaps when a soul has been tampered with, deformed, there is always the possibility that it will return to its shape once again, a gold shell filled with the sweetness we call love. Development proceeds along several paths. We have developmental tasks to master and are faced with developmental crises to deal with. These are mandatory. We are not given choices about whether or not to deal with these issues. There are several developmental tasks and the developmental crisis. Life presents us with many growth experiences, most of which we would never choose on our own. Some of these we go through along with everyone else in our age group. These include major disasters such as earthquakes, floods, droughts, wars, and economic depressions. These shared experiences shape our development. For example, the generation that grew up during the Depression turned to, as a group, to be thrifty, to avoid waste, and to value giving a full day's work for a day's pay. These experiences can be called the sand in the oyster of our lives that nudge us even higher on the developmental scale. And they are transformational in nature. We go in as a certain kind of person and emerge on the other side different. We are irrevocably changed, for we will never again view the world in quite the same way after going through these experiences. They are the make or break experiences. Not everybody who goes through them changes in positive ways. We all start off with the same capacities, but some people develop them and others don't. Dalai Lama. Voluntary EQ development. We humans are given a significant role in determining ourselves through the ways we choose to grow. Robert Cooper. Now, why bother to develop EQ? Pain is about the resistance to the motion of life. Robert Kagan. Man is a pleasure-seeking, pain-avoiding animal, but we are such a contrary species that we seem to be more highly motivated to avoid pain than to seek pleasure. It's true that those with high EQ are more successful in life, but some people, it seems, are not motivated to seek success. Avoiding the downside of not developing EQ may be more motivating for those folks than the positive pursuit of success. So what does it cost to develop EQ? Where is the pain associated with the avoiding growth? It is this. When we are reluctant to move out of our comfort zone into the seemingly treacherous waters of self-development, life becomes monotonous and we gradually become bored. Eventually life lacks color and meaning and the problems grow and fester. If we don't push through this pain and endure the anxiety of growth, we ultimately feel a deadness that makes us at risk for substance abuse or suicide. Or we decide to try and remake ourselves by dumping our current mate in favor of a new life, with or without someone else. Perhaps we try to, get into adrenaline pumping activities in hope that they will make us feel more alive. Unfortunately, many, if not most of us, have a higher tolerance for the pain of not growing than we do for the anxiety that crops up when we try to change. The cost of not doing so is high. The heuristic approach. Now, what is a heuristic? And think of a heuristic as a lens to look through, an experience to try out, an experience to go through, a way of thinking to try on. A heuristic is an incomplete guideline or a rule of thumb that can lead to learning or discovery. Now, there is no single one-size-fits-all route to the development of EQ. Everyone's path is different. The heuristics we will discuss will have varying degrees of value to each person at different times in his or her life. Now, if you're forced to do your personal homework, you end up knowing who you are. Jennifer James. Now, some may be of no use to you at all, while others may be just what you need to do for yourself at this particular time in your life. And at another period, the ones that seemed worthless the first time through may be what you need at this different phase you're in. Change back. All growth is costly. It involves leaving behind old ways of being in the world. Robert Kagan. And remember, don't expect the growth path to be entirely smooth. Change is difficult and there may be some negative reactions. People accustomed to the old you may become anxious and say to you either directly or indirectly, change back, change back. These may even be some of the same folks who've been telling you for years they want you to change. Expect negative reactions in yourself as well. You're not used to this way either. So your system will also tell you to change back. It does this by throwing the system into temporary chaos. You will lose things, feel a little off, or become slightly confused. If you recognize this as a part of the process and not a true obstacle, you can stay on course. The payoff is high and the cost of not doing so is ultimately feeling half dead. Oh, grow up. John Rivers. Characteristics of EQ. Those whose intellectual functioning can retain relative autonomy in periods of stress are more flexible, more adaptable, more independent of the emotionality about them. They cope better with life stresses and their life courses are more orderly and successful and are remarkably free of human problems. High EI. People with high EI believe in the rights and dignity of all people. Don't impose values on others but feel all should respect others' rights. Has a solid sense of self and can function autonomously during times of increased anxiety. Is self-motivated and can delay gratification. Can delay gratification. Remember that. Has satisfying personal relationships, copes successfully with a broad range of human situations. This is high EI. Low EI. Low EI people has a what's in it for me attitude. Poorly developed sense of self, has poorly defined goals and no plan for achieving them, is in dependent relationships, borrows strengths to function, poor ability to sustain relationships, expends much energy keeping anxiety at bay, chaotic lifestyle, does not take responsibility for actions, finds blame outside self. People with high EI share certain fundamental characteristics and abilities. The heuristics we are going to discuss now focus on those traits. So take these as thumb rules and try to imitate. And then that's how you grow. First one, learn your non-negotiables. Which means when you ask somebody, what are your non-negotiables? That is a question you're asking about the bottom line items. What would cause you to go to the wall, to leave a relationship or job, to go to battle? These are your non-negotiables. For example, I'm not willing to stay in a relationship with someone who lies to me. If I'm lied to by someone who sells me something, it's simple. I don't shop there anymore. If we are going to be interacting with each other over time, tell me the truth or I'm out of here. It's non-negotiable with me. So you see, it takes a while to know what our non-negotiables are. Usually we learn by having them ignored over time. Living too long with violations of our non-negotiables compromises our integrity. We feel as if we have sold out if we put up with it. Eventually this becomes such an energy drain that we must change these situations or feel half dead. Learning what your non-negotiables are is a building block for establishing appropriate boundaries. Once you know your own non-negotiables, you can set limits on the behaviors of others without feeling guilty. Non-negotiables are not trivial. In fact, if someone would leave a relationship because of an unmade bed, it wouldn't be the bed that was the issue, but some underlying cause such as a feeling that one's desires were often too ignored by the other party. Learning our non-negotiables is an important building block to developing the right smarts. In matters of principle, stand like a rock. Thomas Jefferson. So begin with being familiar with your non-negotiables. Observe carefully when you feel hurt, angry, or insulted. Is this a non-negotiable for you? Are you truly willing to take serious action over this, no matter what the cost? Next, set appropriate boundaries. When you love someone, you do all you can for them without giving yourself away. Now, in the shifting balance between developing self and developing relationships, most of us have a tendency to overdevelop one side, and as a consequence, the other side is left wanting. Those whose primary emphasis is on the relationship side often have a hard time setting limits on the behaviors of others. They don't have clearly established boundaries. Now, some people are exquisitely sensitive to others' boundaries, even those that are not explicitly stated. It's as though there is a force field around each person, and those perceptions, these perceptive souls, grasp this instinctively and don't violate boundaries. If everyone were like this, we would need to establish clear boundaries. Alas, most of us need things to be more specific. The amazing thing is, while you would think it would be good to be around people with poor boundaries, it's actually no fun. You think you'd be able to have your way more often with individuals like this, or not have to negotiate so fiercely. Well, that's partly true, but the downside of being around these folks is you often injure their feelings without their being aware of it, and then you feel like a jerk. You may find out about this through a third party, as people with poor boundaries tend to be conflict phobic as well. And rather than confront the violator, they are likely to bring in someone else to tell you about it. If I'm the violator, this makes me feel like a big insensitive mule when I find out about it. I also feel a little injured myself, since I seldom unknowingly do anything hurtful. And if I do so without meaning to, I feel mortified by my clunky behavior. And I feel resentful that a third party was brought in to judge my behavior, and not a little paranoid that my friends are talking about me behind my back. Everyone wins when boundaries are clear. If I set clear boundaries, I'm protected from the damaging behavior of others. If you set them, I don't have to tiptoe around you in order to offend you. Get clear on what is and what is not acceptable behavior from other people toward you. When there's a violation, calmly and even lovingly let the person know, and request the change in behavior that's called for. If you always had established trouble establishing boundaries, you need to raise your own awareness level to detect those violations which are early on, and when they are minor annoyances, rather than wait for them to become major violations. Sometimes it feels pretty, but until your boundaries are no longer being violated, this is the heuristic for you. Learn to establish appropriate boundaries. Everyone wins when people make their boundaries clear to those around them. 3. Be assertive. Selfishness is when someone places his own comfort before your convenience. John Tepperman. Be assertive. Assertiveness training has its very great benefits, and being assertive means learning to say no. And if someone makes a request that isn't right for you in some way, one of you is going to feel a certain degree of discomfort no matter what your answer is. If you say no, the other person suffers. If you say yes, it's going to be you. You get to choose, right? If you have trouble with assertiveness, examine your feelings of entitlement. On some level, do you feel undeserving? Do you not feel entitled to your emotional acre to take up your share of the available psychic space? What unresolved issues from your past have set such a pattern in place? What can you do to establish a new pattern? If you find it hard to say no, learn to pass and say, let me think about that and get back to you when a request comes in. That way you avoid a knee-jerk yes response, and you have a little space to consider whether you really want to respond affirmatively. If you'd like to know much more, keep practicing and read some books on assertiveness. If we do not take care of ourselves first, we become useless in helping others. So the heuristic is, learn to be assertive, get comfortable with your own emotional acre, and defend your territory. Learn to pause before you automatically say yes. Say, let me think about that and get back to you. The next heuristic is, be integrous. Integrous isn't a word basically. But the discrepancy between what we say we believe and what we actually do is a barometer of the degree of internal conflict in our lives. Now you see, the discrepancy between what we say we believe and what we actually do is a barometer of the degree of internal conflict in our lives. So we have a set of core values that determine who we are. They are therefore, whether we have articulated them or not, they are. When we do something large or small that violates these values, we get that little tug that tells us we have sprung an energy leak. So tiny we can't even hear it hiss, but deflating us just the same. There are people who do not have this internal emotional gyroscope. Those identified as sociopaths and psychopaths operate without this guidance, to their cost and our peril. Sociopaths can beat a lie detector because they do not have the galvanic skin response or spike in the blood pressure or heart rate that register for the rest of us when we tell lies. A great many of these folks populate our jails and prisons. Ultimately, the cost of living without integrity is pretty high. So live an integrous life, and of course it's not easy. And you keep asking yourself which one is the right thing to do. Being in integrity sometimes means having to make hard choices. So remember, the heuristic is set wonderful examples of integrity for others and live an integrous life. So my grandmother gave me a diary for my 10th birthday. On the flyleaf she inscribed, "Never do anything you would be ashamed to write in these pages." This is the heuristic. Be integrous. Take authentic action. That's the next one. Every human being is treacherous to every other human being because he has to be true to his own soul. D.H. Lawrence. What does it mean to take authentic action? Authentic action. Now, it means it's a really scary term because usually there is a cost to doing it, whether we would rather not, and which we probably will not be willing to pay. Complaining or dreaming about change is easier. The only cost is that you stay in a situation that's making you unhappy. We are often more willing to tolerate the pain of staying the same than to deal with the anxiety of or changing a situation. Often we dull the pain with our drug of choice, but we know the situation stays the same. Do something scary or face the problems from not doing it. So heuristic is discover what's holding you back from achieving your goals. Take stock of what the cost would be and the necessary activity to achieve the goals, and then take authentic action. That means be a high energy go-getter. Learn to soothe yourself. Anger is the feeling that makes your mouth work faster than your mind. Even Esa. So find out some way in which you can soothe yourself. And there are many ways of doing it. Deep breathing can help, self-talk can help, and some people feel calm enough to resume any high-stressed encounter using vigorous physical exercise. That also helps, and even hydrotherapy, having a bath can help, and massage can help. When angry, count 4. When very angry, swear. Mark Twain. The heuristic is simple. Find a way to soothe yourself that works for you and use it when you feel yourself getting out of control. You will keep blood in your brain and take the smart action. The next one, complain strategically. Remember, he that always complains is never pitied. So you must learn to complain strategically. There's a word for complaining more than once about something that complaining can't change. Nagging. Complaining is also a big energy drain. It doesn't get results. It doesn't solve the problems, and it seldom makes us feel better. However, it does have its place as a status quo maintaining procedure. That is how it works. Let's say we receive a psychic insult or injury. Someone has hurt our feelings or done us an injustice. Some part of us believes we are entitled to something better. A little voice speaks. This isn't fair. I don't deserve this. This shouldn't be happening to me. This belief that we should be getting fair treatment clashes with the fact of our being treated otherwise and creates tension in us. If the tension builds up long enough, sooner or later something's got to give. Something's got to give. One of the 4 things will happen is the situation changes. The person apologizes. Nothing changes. We endure and get backaches and migraines. This is the least desired, most frequently. We leave the situation behind, often not an option or an extremely disruptive one. We take authentic action and change the situation ourselves. The only choice we can't leave. We need the change, and it isn't happening now. And it's not happening on its own. Nearly all of us have discovered that if we tell our story to a sympathetic third party, he will become somewhat indignant on our behalf. For a time, we feel a little better. It really feels good to have someone say, "Oh, poor fella." This causes some of the tension to abate, and then we can go back into the situation still unchanged and function. So, when you find yourself tempted to complain about something to a sympathetic friend, ask yourself, do I want to reduce tension or so I can stay in the situation, or do I want to let the tension build up so I can change it? If it is the former, by all means complain away. All of us complain from time to time and it feels good for a while, but if the situation needs to be changed, stop complaining. Make a statement and take authentic action. So remember the heuristic. When you feel the need to complain, stop for a moment and ask yourself, do I want to be able to tolerate this situation that is unlikely to change, or do I want to change it? If it is the former, call up a sympathetic friend and explain the situation, asking if they will when you finish. Say, oh poor fellow, I really find it bad for you. Then take a deep breath and head on back into the situation. If you want a situation to change, actively don't complain for a while. When the tension reaches critical mass, you will be able to take authentic action. Be willing to live with chaos and confusion. Growth demands a temporary surrender of security. Using this heuristic approach, you will try on new modes of functioning. This may feel uncomfortable at first. Change makes us uneasy because it throws us into a temporary state of disequilibrium. But this very instability leads us to our creativity and creative responses. Anything that increases stress on the system leads to a jump to a higher state of being, right? A higher level of EQ. Even small changes make us anxious. But remember the heuristic, be willing to tolerate the chaos, confusion and discomfort that sometimes accompanies change. Take action to soothe yourself if necessary. Next, learn to negotiate. Do you prefer that you be right or that you be happy? Right? Once you know what your non-negotiables are, life is simpler. Everything else is by definition negotiable. So now it's important to learn to negotiate. Right? Learning to negotiate is a must-have arrow in your quiver of relationship tools and is a great way to raise EQ. A heuristic. When you are having a dispute, 1. Get clear on the non-negotiables. 2. If this is a negotiable term, focus on issues. Is there a solution that will serve both issues? Win-win. If not, settle on a compromise. If you have trouble, call in a mediator. Next one, the 10th one. Don't wear projections. Don't mind criticism. If it is untrue, disregard it. If it is unfair, keep from irritation. If it is ignorant, smile. If it is justified, learn from it. Everybody's got an opinion and they're entitled to it. However, a lot of folks feel compelled to share those gems of wisdom with us, particularly in the form of criticism. While we may not be thrilled to get their lovely data, we don't have to be shriveled up by it, because it's just that, an opinion. Let me share 2 examples. 2 movie critics wrote the following about the word movie persuasion. View. Sitting through 112 minutes of persuasion is true exercise in persistence, full of performances that could have been done better by hand puppets, sloppy direction, and a script that's nearly impossible to follow. Persuasion has very little to redeem it. Christopher Null. Another person. Persuasion is a perfect movie. I have never read it, so the story was totally fresh. On the other hand, this movie is so good that if I had to read the book 1,000 times, it would have left me awestruck by the acting and the production. I do hope all of the Academy members see this show. It deserves awards in a myriad of categories. Steve Rhodes. Were these 2 guys watching the same movie? It's hard to believe, isn't it? But they each brought who they are to the viewing, and because of that, came away with disparate opinions. What was happening is a process called projection. So your critic is doing the same thing. Encumbered by the baggage from his previous experiences, your critic is predisposed to see things in a certain way. Your song and dance, the way you wear your hair, the meal you cook, the report you wrote, triggered something in him from an earlier experience. Yes, Dr. Freud, often from childhood. And he projected this onto you in the form of criticism. Now, don't wear projections. Think of this. Next time, we all have, we have each projected our childhood experiences into our current life. Think of this. The next time you find yourself reacting negatively to criticism, consider the source. My mother used to say, get curious. My therapist used to say, what do you know about the person that would incline her to such an opinion? Is this really about you, or is this a projection? If you can create enough distance to examine the criticism dispassionately, you can evaluate whether you need to make any adjustment based on the information. Do so if necessary, and then move on. There's no need to paint yourself in the color of the criticism. It's not you. The best response to hostile criticism is to yawn and forget it. Heuristic. Listen carefully to criticism. If it is unwarranted, acknowledge it for the projection it is, and leave it behind. Learning to abide by our own internal standards is a way to develop emotional intelligence. Accept criticism for the gift it is. We should consider the person who shows our shortcomings as one who excavates a hidden treasure in us when we are unaware of it. So the heuristic is, when you're being criticized, pause and say, let me think about that. If making the implied change will enlarge your life or improve your relationship, do it. And thank the bestower of such a lovely gift. The improvement raises your EQ. Develop your sense of humor. Perhaps we come to this planet for one great purpose, to develop a terrific sense of humor. Maybe laughter provides the key that finally unlocks the door to happiness. Dan Millman. So the heuristic is make a conscious effort to develop your sense of humor. Consider the positive payoff of learning to laugh at life. It will raise your EQ exponentially. Getting out of my own way. Get rid of energy drains. You see, to speed up you make one of the two choices. Reduce the drag or increase the thrust. Now, make a list of all energy drains you're dealing with on a constant basis. Systematically go through the list and divide it into two lists. Things I can do something about, things that cannot be changed. Tackle the A list one by one. For heaven's sake, put up a hook for those car keys. Take another look at the B list. Are you sure? Is there anything you can move to the A list and then tackle it? Surrender the B list. Right? Clear up incompletions, the next one. I liken incompletions to holes in a water glass of life. Until these holes are filled, one can never have enough water to keep the glass full. So, energy drains come in many forms. Unfinished tasks and projects deplete our energy in big way. Make a list of your unfinished projects. Estimate the time it will take to complete each one, then double that time. Trust me on this. Then set aside several blocks of time devoted to one project at a time and get it done. Get it out of your hair, off your mind, and check it off your list. Alternatively, decide not to complete it and get rid of it. Who knows, maybe you will have wonderful experiences. Give up addictions. Get out from under the addictions that are holding you back from achieving your potential. Get help if necessary. Simplify. I mean to lead a simplified life, to choose a simple shell I can carry easily like a hermit crab. Now, manifest plainness, embrace simplicity, reduce selfishness, have few desires. Ask yourself these questions. With each new bit of stuff, with each new project, each new something that wants to intrude on your time and space, will this enlarge my life or clutter it? Will the happiness units I get from this outweigh the cost units to get and have it in my life? Simplifying frees up energy and raises EQ. Give up perfection. The perfection lies deep within your imperfection. Embrace your cellulite. Okay, heuristic. Give up the need to be perfect and become more accepting of yourself and those in your life. If you need someone to show you how, you're welcome to use any good friend. Developing relationships. Holding on to yourself in a relationship. Allow yourself to be in a relationship without losing yourself. Allow your rough edges to be buffed in the process. This is EQ development at its most intense. Hang out with the kids. And then have a child, adopt a child, become a foster parent, spend time around kids. It is a true EQ raiser. Next is get clear about your needs and ask directly for what you need and then express your appreciation. Learn from difficult people. Get curious about the lesson you're learning in dealing with difficult people. You're really high on the EQ scale when you can see them as the gifts they are. Or you could buy them a plane ticket. Learn to take no for an answer. Sometimes God